He may be dead, but his fear still lives on. He buried thousands alive. Even after his death, over 8,000 silent soldiers still wait beneath the ground to protect him. Who was this man? Why did he seek immortality? This is the story of Qin Shi Huang, and this is no ordinary tale. Fact 1. Even his birth was shrouded in mystery. Qin Shi Huang, born as Yingzheng in 259 BCE, entered the world under a cloud of secrecy. Some sources claim his real father wasn't the king, but a merchant who had a secret affair with his mother. This rumor was buried for centuries because it would call his right to the throne into question. He came into the world with something to prove, and he proved it by rewriting history itself. Fact 2. He turned the past to ashes after unifying China. Qin Shi Huang didn't just stop at political or administrative reforms. He tried to erase the very ideological and cultural past of the land. He saw ancient philosophies as threats, especially Confucianism, and believed, no one existed before me. History begins with me. In 213 BCE, one of the most infamous events in history took place: the burning of books and the burial of scholars. Thousands of philosophical texts were destroyed under his orders. Only practical books on medicine, agriculture, or divination were spared. His goal: to wipe away ideas from the past and reshape thought around the emperor alone. He didn't just rule the land, he tried to rule the minds of his people. Fact 3. He wanted to be more than a king. He wanted to be a god. When Yingzheng united the land, he didn't call himself king anymore. He adopted a new title, Qin Shi Huang, the first divine emperor of the Qin dynasty. It was a title never before used in a Chinese history. He wanted to be remembered not as a man, but as a myth. This was more than ambition. It was divinity. Qin Shi Huang believed he wasn't just a ruler, but the earthly representative of heaven itself. He wanted to live forever, to rule not just this world, but eternity. Fact 4. He didn't want to go to death alone. Qin Shi Huang refused to face death alone. He dragged an entire world underground with him: soldiers, officials, servants, even concubines. This wasn't a burial. It was a subterranean empire. Before his death, he ordered the construction of one of the most massive tomb complexes in ancient history. Its most famous part is the Terracotta Army. Over 8,000 life-size clay soldiers, each with unique faces and weapons. They were meant to guard him in the afterlife, to continue his empire beneath the soil. According to legend, many of his wives and servants were buried alive with him, forced to follow him into the next world. His tomb is said to have rivers of mercury, ceilings painted with stars, and artificial mountains to represent paradise. Because even in death, Qin Shi Huang wanted to rule like a god. 5. His tomb remains untouched. Qin Shi Huang's actual tomb has never been opened. Historical sources suggest it's protected by deadly traps and rivers of mercury flowing beneath the surface. Some experts believe that if the tomb is disturbed, it could release toxic gases that would be fatal to anyone nearby. Even with today's advanced technology, the Chinese government still refuses to open it. Too dangerous, too sacred. And so, the first emperor of China may still lie there, untouched, guarded, and undisturbed, just as he planned. 6. He buried freethinkers. Alive, Qin Shi Huang didn't just want to rule China. He wanted to rule thoughts. It wasn't enough to control bodies. He needed obedient minds, so anyone who dared to think differently became an enemy, especially scholars and philosophers. In one of the darkest chapters of Chinese history, between 213 and 212 BCE, hundreds of scholars were buried alive by the emperor's orders. Their crime? Speaking their minds. Some criticized the emperor, others simply supported ancient teachings like Confucianism. But for Qin, there could be only one truth, his own, and that truth was enforced with brutal silence. 7. He sent expeditions across the seas for immortality. Qin Shi Huang didn't believe his empire should end with his death. He didn't want to be just a king. He wanted to become a god. And for that, he needed to live forever. So he looked beyond the borders of China toward the mysterious seas. Legends tell us he sent multiple expeditions in search of the elixir of life. He believed immortal beings lived on a fog-shrouded island called Pinglai. One man led the most famous journey, an alchemist named Xu Fu. He sailed with hundreds of boys and girls, promising to return with the elixir of eternal life. But he never came back. Some say he reached Japan and stayed there, becoming a legendary cultural figure. Back in China, Qin Shi Huang waited. Days turned into years. No news, no elixir. Desperate, he began drinking mercury-based potions made by his court alchemists. And in the end, the emperor who sought eternal life fell victim to his own obsession. 8. He built the Great Wall of China. When people think of the Great Wall, they often imagine a fortress built purely for defense. But for Qin Shi Huang, the wall was more than a shield. It was a symbol of unity. He didn't start the wall from scratch. Instead, he connected and expanded the existing fortifications built by various warring states. These scattered walls were fused into one massive barrier stretching thousands of kilometers, not just made of stone and earth, but of imperial ambition and iron will. Countless lives were lost during its construction. So many, in fact, that the Great Wall is sometimes called the longest cemetery on Earth. For Qin Shi Huang, the wall wasn't merely a border, it was the seal of his empire, a statement in stone that this land was one and it was his. 9. They hid his death. Qin Shi Huang died, but the world didn't hear about it, not immediately. Instead, silence spread across the empire like a shadow. His closest advisors and high officials made a chilling decision. They would keep the emperor's death a secret. Why? Because chaos was inevitable. The emperor had died far from the capital, deep in the north of China. If word got out, a bloody power struggle could erupt before they even returned to Shenyang. Civil war, rebellion, collapse. The empire he built could vanish overnight, so they hid the truth. As the body began to decompose inside the royal carriage, a strange solution was used. They filled the coach with large amounts of fish. The stench of rotting flesh was masked by the overpowering smell of seafood. Meanwhile, the officials continued issuing decrees in the emperor's name, pretending he was still alive, ruling from the shadows. 10th, an entire nation bears his name. Qin Shi Huang was more than a ruler. He gave a name to a civilization. The name China itself traces back to him. After unifying the warring states in 221 BCE, he created the first centralized empire under the Qin dynasty, and that name, Qin, echoed across borders. In Persian, Indian, and Arabic sources, the land was called Qin, Sin, or Sin. Later, those names evolved into the word we use today, China, a global superpower, a land of 1.4 billion people, and it still carries the name of one man. Qin Shi Huang didn't just build roads, palaces, and walls. He shaped an identity, a legacy etched into the very name of a nation. He gave the world a name it has never forgotten. History doesn't always love its tyrants. Sometimes it buries them. But Qin Shi Huang was too big to bury. He burned the past, built the future, and in dying made himself eternal. If the dark and powerful tale of this ruthless emperor moved you, give this video a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel for more secrets and legends from the past. Remember, history never stays silent. We just have to listen.